Hi everyone. Today markets did not hold any of those gains from yesterday. We can see we sold off here pre-market, tried to recoup some of it early in the session, couldn't even fill the gaps, and then we sold even further, breaking that level, breaking the lows from the last 2 days, and then we caught a bounce into the close. Is it going to be the same as this, where we hit those key levels and then sell again? Potentially, but right now 574.71 is the level. Let's see if we can find some more evidence for a potential reversal, or are we just going to continue to move top left to bottom right? Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So news for today, Trump says he's not even looking at the stock market. He is focused on tariffs, and those are going to make the United States strong. I find this a little bit hard to believe. He's often talked about how the stock market did really well during his last administration up until COVID, and I do think he does care about the stock market, but for now, there's going to be a little bit of pain, and clearly he has acknowledged that. He talked about it in his speech. But for now, they've paused some tariffs for Mexico outside of just the autos that we talked about yesterday. Canada hasn't really done much there, but Mexico, there's been more discussions and there have been more exemptions. And I thought that would rally markets a little bit, but it didn't, and then we ended up going lower even after that news came out. So clearly not super interested in the stock market, at least in the short term. And clearly there has been some disparity between the United States and other countries in terms of the tariffs, which is why he's announcing that reciprocal tariff to April, I think is going to be interesting. Markets have not priced that in any way whatsoever, but for now, we're going to see if this slight reprieve does give markets a bounce. Moving over to fear and greed, down to a 17, super low number. We haven't seen it that low in a long time. Looking at the timeline, the last time we were anywhere near that was 5 August of last year, so quite a while since we've been there at a 17. We're at a 17 again. You can see we hit 17 on 4 March, so we're in that same vicinity we've been in. That was a turning point here when we hit 17. That was the low. Then we got some rallies out of it. Are we going to see a short-term bounce and then a continuation lower just because of the structure? Hard to say for now, but just about every metric still in extreme fear across the board. Put call ratio hovering there in extreme fear as well. Volatility, extreme fear. Safe haven demand. The only thing holding up right now is junk bonds. Bonds have held up really well, especially compared to each other. So people buying bonds, people looking for safety. Every other metric shows extreme fear. Moving over to earnings here just for a second, you can see we did have some on this Tuesday. This was pretty much the only one here for the week. You did have Target and CrowdStrike a little earlier, but Broadcom today, big beat for them, met expectations, raised guidance, big numbers. Costco missed on earnings, interesting. Beat on revenue, good for them. Kroger got the inverse, and then Hewlett Packard, huge miss for them, and they were down quite a bit. So Broadcom, we'll take a look at them later. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see Eurozone decision here in line with expectations, lending facility at 2.9% down from 3.15. You can see that ECB decision in line with expectations as well, so they're continuing to cut. Interesting. Initial jobless claims came in better than expectations, coming off of that hot number the previous, so that should take out a little bit of the fear. And then you got labor costs a little bit worse than expectations, so that's good there. And then looking at Atlanta Fed, slightly better number, but still very negative. Fed balance sheet continuing to roll off, just short of 10 billion this week. And then you can see for tomorrow, the big numbers here, non-farm payrolls, unemployment data, Fed members speaking, labor participation rate, also interesting, but the big one, unemployment rate, is it going to stay flat at 4? Is it going to step up to 4.1? Then you got Fed Powell speaking here at 12:30. That could be interesting. I wouldn't expect a ton out of it at this point. I feel like everybody knows just about everything he could possibly say at this point, but maybe we get some interesting data here with the unemployment rate, and then he gets asked about it later. That could be interesting. Moving over to max pain here just for a second, you can see the max pain is at 594. I don't really think we're going to get that high. That would be about a 2% up move, but 585 is your big put wall. Not expecting to go any lower than that on a closing basis, so that should give us a bullish day tomorrow. Interesting. 590 in play, but you got some calls there as well. So 585 to 590 makes sense. If you can get through that 590 level, there's a lot of room up to 600. But again, not expecting a huge move, and that's really going to be dictated by what we see on the unemployment report. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&Ps here, you can see all of the trend lines are broken at this point. Let's go ahead and extend out this one here. Maybe that's a target, something in there. Not quite. We're well off of it. But if we did continue to fall, 556 would potentially be in play. I could see that one just below the 200 there. Obviously, the 200 is your major level, at least for now. You got some consolidation lows in here as well, around 567.80. Waiting to see if this holds up or not. Momentum still bearish. RSI still bearish. Waiting to see if that 200 holds. I would guess we get a touch of it here pretty soon. I said yesterday I still think we're going to touch it, and we were very, very close here today at 569.28. And then looking at the short time frames and the levels like we talked about in the open, you can see 574.71 is the level. We rallied up to that after hours. We're rejecting a little bit. Didn't quite hit 569.90. That was my level to the downside if this broke, which it did. Almost hit the level and then rallied back up. Are we going to reject from here, hit that level, and then push? The next level for me, 565.16, and then that would take us well through the 200. It's been a long time since we've been through the 200. That's going to shift a lot of mentalities in trading, in my opinion. So we'll see if it holds. Right now, continues to be a downtrend. Moving over to the SPY charts, again, you can see that selling on the hourly here on the Tasty charts. We hit that second ATR band, and that held up a little bit here around that 584.99 area, 585 area, and then we bounced. Right now, we're right at the 9 at 574.16. Current price right in there as well at 574.22, technically above it. Can it hold? So far, it has not. You can see similar price action here, got above it, held for a little bit, and then sold to a lower low. So waiting to see what happens. Probably going to not go anywhere until we see that unemployment data. If it's good, and the problem with that is even if it's good data, could send markets lower because then we're probably not going to see those rate cuts until much later in the year. But if it's bad, that means the economy is weakening. Moving over to the NASDAQ, similar thesis to the SPY, except for the fact that we are well below that 200 now. We closed below it. The low was 486.20, and then the closing price 488.22. That 200 was at 491.64. So right now, we're below that level, waiting to see if it can hold or not. After hours, we're up a little bit. We caught a little bit of a bounce. You can see we broke this trend line. We've been watching that for a little bit. That's the trend line back to this high. We held that kind of consolidation for a bit, and then we broke here, and then we broke all the way back down to that level. Is it going to continue out here? Let's go ahead and extend out this trend line and see if it makes sense. Somewhere in there potentially could be in play around the 476, 475 area. You can see we're kind of in this consolidation here on a volume profile. The next volume area would be right here around 481.50, and then the next one around 472, 473, back to this zone here. So got a couple of levels to work with. Is it going to continue to sell? Momentum bearish, RSI not quite oversold yet, but still very bearish. And then looking at it on the hourly chart, basically the same as the SPY, fell pre-market, recouped some of it early in the session, couldn't fill the gap, and then we sold to a lower low. Hit my level, 486.84, touched that level and bounced pretty strong into the close. Right now we're above that trend line in the after hours, waiting to see if it can hold in here or not. Cut through this trend, retested it, continuation lower. Pretty classic trading. I didn't think we would get this aggressive of a fall early in the session, but turns out markets are still very, very bearish, even with the pauses on tariffs. Moving over to the NASDAQ actually hit that lowest ATR band here, obviously cut through the trailing stop, which was right here around that 492 area. Once that broke, we went right to the lowest band, which was the target, to the downside around 486. Touched that level and bounced. Right now it's still in the same area, 486.03. But if it touches it again, this is probably going to roll here. Your trailing stop right now is all the way up at 544 cents. So far, every retest continues to give you lower lows. So do we get a little bit of a retest before the lower low? That's pretty much the only question. Does unemployment help us out? Still maybe. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell did actually go lower 1.5%, but it held up okay. 205.07 was the level we've tested 3 days in a row. So far on a closing basis, we have not closed below that level. Is it going to hold up a little bit? RSI finding a little bit of strength in there. After hours up a little bit as well. Interesting to see that. Looks like a consolidation low. It did go lower and it did sell, but still looks consolidative. Not as bad as the other ones we just looked at. And then looking at the Dow, similar thesis, same consolidation low. It is below the level 426.20 after hours, we're back above it. Is this the consolidation and we're going to push back to 432? Certainly seems like it looks a little better here today. Again, certainly seems like this low could still hold even with the down candle that we got of about 1%. Moving over to the Mag 7. Mag 7 continues to hover at that 200. Again, 286.01, pretty much everything hovering right around that 200 level. Is it going to bounce from here? Waiting to see. We dipped below it briefly, held it on a closing basis. Momentum bearish, RSI still bearish. Still just off of oversold conditions. No change to the levels. 283.46 to 290.65. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple was down very little, 40 cents. Touched the resistance, rejected from there. Almost hit the 144, rejected from there. So right in the middle of this range, no change to that. And then looking at Microsoft, retested 394, held that level as a higher low. Tried to go a little bit higher, couldn't, still was down 1%. Did fill the gap. 21 EMA is your resistance, 404.63. Support is still 394.22. After we got above it yesterday. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA, these continue to be dumpster fires, 5.6% and 5.7% respectively. Tesla well below the 200 at this point, broke back below 264 and we closed below it now, so headed to 255.44. Continues to look awful. If it round trips this move, that's going to take us all the way back to 214. Seems like it's in play at this point. We're right at this kind of consolidation high just for a moment, looking for some gap fills probably. Either way, looks awful. Looking at NVIDIA here, broke below this trend on a closing basis. We've touched it a couple of times, had one close below it here and then immediately rejected, but now we're below it. Headed back to 106.6 in my opinion. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Small bounce after hours, probably because of the Broadcom earnings, but either way, looks bad, looking for 106. If it can bounce from 106, maybe we push back to 116.7, but so far, not so good. NVIDIA looks like it's going to sell at least another $5 or so. Moving over to Meta and Broadcom. Meta was down 4.35%. Broadcom even worse, 6.33%. But then we got a really nice earnings from them, and they jumped all the way up here to 201.10. So we hit the 200. Earnings bringing us back to here. Filled these gaps, looking like we're going to get a little bit of a bounce in Broadcom. See if it can hold. You can see last earnings really, really strong. Pushed us up to here. This earnings not as strong to get us back up there, but still recouping a lot of the losses over the last couple days. And then looking at Meta just a little bit more, 602.95 is your support if this kind of consolidation high breaks. Honestly, I should add a level in here. I would say we're probably below it. I would put the level around 632. So I added it here, 630.99, right at the candle high from 6 January. And then you can see we're closed below it, headed towards 602.95. And then the 144 is your next level there at 595.28. Had a massive run. Looks like we're about to round trip all of that right back into this consolidation at the 595 area. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples resuming that kind of consolidation here, still looking like risk off. You can see discretionary is positive at 0.18. Discretionary selling to 206.05. Your next level 203.98. 200 just below that, sitting at 202.32. My guess is we go at least to this zone before we start to see bounces. Still need to see that touch on the SPY charts as well. So still expecting at least a little bit more selling. Moving over to real estate and energy. Real estate selling off 2.74%. Remember we said above 420, 42.84, definitely extended. We've pulled back here a little bit. Anywhere below 42 I think is a decent buying opportunity, but so far above 42 just seems unsustainable for this indicator here. And then looking at energy, the only sector that was positive from what I could tell, up about 0.33%. You have a consolidation low here. Back in December, we touched that zone 84.50. Seems to be a buying opportunity every time we get into this zone. So far, it's happened many, many times. Back here, September, got close to it. August of last year, September again, just a little bit later. All of those pushes up into the 90 area. So far, seems like an interesting area. Can it push back into the 90s area from 85, 86? Seems like it will. Moving over to breadth, 20 and 50-day breadth, basically unchanged. They did move down slightly, but we're in the same range that we were in on Tuesday. You can see a big wick to some relative lows. Interesting there, but on a closing basis, we ended up staying pretty much unchanged from Tuesday this week. So breadth, again, hanging in there pretty well despite markets selling. Moving over to the dollar did push right to that trend. We talked about it in yesterday's video. We broke 104, the trend was in play. 103.9, we touched the trend. You can see it here, quick touch, caught a bounce. We're kind of in a consolidation now, waiting to see if it holds this level and bounces or not. Honestly, I'd like to see it bounce at this point. We're super extended. I don't want the dollar to continue to oversell here. We're at a 28.34 on the RSI, definitely extended. Want to see a higher low continuation run. If this higher lows here, you would expect to push back into this zone up around the 111 area, just off of a technical basis, in my opinion. So we'll see, is this the zone where the dollar finally bounces? Does make sense. Moving over to bonds. Bonds sold a little bit more, about 1/3% for each of these, but you can see TLT bouncing after hours. J&K, same zone we've been in for seemingly forever. We got here in August of 24 and we are still here in March of 25. So we've been here for a long time. We're right at the 200, just like we've been talking about on seemingly everything else. Want to see TLT continue to hold this 21. We did get the touch of it today. After hours continues to bounce. Want to see it push above that 92.82 area. I think this is a buying opportunity. I think this is a higher low, and I do think we are going to some higher highs. Moving over to the VIX. VIX continues to throw wicks to that upper trend line. We're right here, still in that same zone we've been in. Touch that longer term trend there as well, right in the same zone. This is a consolidation of trends. Still think we might throw one more up there. Let's go ahead and extend this one out. Maybe that gives you a price target somewhere around the 29 to 30 area. My level 28.89, momentum bullish RSI, almost overbought here on the VIX. Want to see it throw one kind of culminating event, and then we can kind of bring it back down to earth. But so far, the VIX looks bullish. Moving over to my accounts, it says I lost 110, but I think I ended up losing closer to 90, and that is super upsetting because I traded really, really well, and then I made one boneheaded decision and gave it all back, and then just a little bit more. Not terrible considering how much markets were down. You can see the Qs were down almost 3%. They were down 3% mid-session, caught a bounce. After hours, they're bouncing a little bit. I really should have traded better. Super frustrating. Anyway, in terms of positions for tomorrow, I sold a 482, 483 for a little bit over $4 credit for tomorrow's session. The IV is super, super high. You can see a 54 for tomorrow because of that unemployment data tomorrow. Do I think we're going to go down another 1.5% tomorrow after being down 2.75% today? It seems unlikely. It just seems unlikely in my opinion. I don't think the unemployment data is going to be that terrible that we're going to see a major crash like that, but who knows? Right now, these are my positions. Playing it relatively safe. Honestly, should have taken one probably on the IWM, but didn't want to take too much risk. This is kind of a lot already. 42, 43 for about $2 net credit, so the buy price is closer to 480. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of this tariff flip-flopping. What do you think of Trump's comments on the stock market? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.